10 minutes left for a couple more questions. Any comments? Quickies?
I have a quickie. I'm enamored by a concept that I think we do, but we don't think about it as a concept, and that is, I think there are social inventions that have as much influence on human behavior as technological inventions. Whether it's planet Earth, just this Earth sitting out in a black space, the notion of a spaceship Earth, the lifeboat ethic, this has gotten some people to change behavior. And I think that there's going to be a silver bullet, golden ring somewhere that will get people to realize that how to change their behavior. And that might be, I think it's through education and training, because I'm old and I'm teaching kids who are 20 and they have no attention span, or one matching mine, which is ADD. So we have to work with that, you know, and figure out how to get them to take responsibility for stuff. We need transparency, as I said once before. We need transparency in budgeting. You have to know, it's great, no one wants to be taxed, but you have to see where the tax money's going. If you see where the tax money's going and it's going to give you your roads and your green cities and smart living and stuff like that, you'll do it. But if it's going to things like wars you didn't need and stuff like that, you're not going to do it. So I think there is this notion of social invention, and if we come up with the right phrase, we might be, like sustainability, sustainable mobility is a great notion, and it applies not just to cars and cities, it applies to pastoral societies in Africa and Mongolia. I mean, so I can change behavior in other countries using this concept.
Good.
That's what I think.
Thanks, Mickey. Yes, sir.
Frank, I was wondering if you'd comment, you know, Bill had said about $1 trillion investment in sustainability, a Marshall Plan. Does that make economic sense?
Not at a zero price of carbon. I mean, that's the problem with most of these technologies is that I mean, if you don't price carbon, unfortunately, most of the investments don't look very good. But I mean, I think everyone would I think at least recognize that if we do, you know, as to say, I don't know if I'm a good or bad skeptic, but I'm a skeptic, but I'm not I don't deny it, and I think that I'd like to have some insurance against this event, just like I buy car insurance or just like I buy house insurance on my house. And you know, so I think if we pitched it that way in terms of thinking about a price for carbon and putting a way to think of this, I mean, I view the sorts of things that he's pushing for as, you know, a good insurance policy against the future. We should know about it. But the trouble is that, you know, making that argument in certain parts of the United States is pretty hard outside of the coastal area, yeah, the Great Middle, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's why I like the price, because everybody sees the price and they decide that's too expensive for me. They don't know why the price is high. They don't care. They just don't buy, and they respond to that. Now, the smart people, they do all the other stuff. And you know.
All right, Dr. Hansen, question? Go. Oh, Kathy, here's your microphone.
I'm really interested in water, and you know, with the lakes drying up in the west, and then you've got some Midwest states along the Great Lakes saying we're not going to sell you our water anymore. What do you project is going to happen? Do you see these states, and I mean, people are still moving to California. Do you see these states drying up? I mean, what's going to happen with this water situation out here?
In 1 minute or less.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think that well, in my experience, just under the kinds of conditions that we're seeing today, I don't know that we've really seen societies completely crash because they ran out of water per se. They can run out of poor water, you know. I guess what I'm saying is that in the end, there will be a price that will be paid, and I think that
if you live
the
in
bills will come due now or later.
Yeah.
The bills will come due now or later.
Yes.
They will come due.
you know, yeah. It's a tough question. I'm not pessimistic. I think that people will actually sort these things out.
Just to follow on quickly, there's a lot of infrastructure that, if constructed, would help us to use the water that we do have much more effectively. Now, we got to pay for that, and that's where pricing comes in.
Yeah.
But it really is a case of, you know, there's sort of higher quality and lower quality uses. Clearly, drinking is the highest quality. Then next would be, okay, it's no longer potable, but it's good for cooling power plants. It's good for putting on certain kinds of crops. You know, that sort of thing, like biofuels. Do we really care if the water's potable if we're using it for biofuel production? No, I don't really
Think of
so.
it just like carbon. Same efficiency and conservation is the first great step. And new technology development. I live with a gray water system. Unfortunately, it can't be retrofitted, largely because of regulatory regimes, but it's great for new development. There's a wonderful book published 3 years ago by my CU colleague Bill Travis called New Geographies of the American West. And he deals head-on with this, largely through modeling, but he's a social geographer who asks the question, do natural resource constraints really make a difference when it comes to human settlement patterns? And his answer generally is no.
If I could just you know, the one, perhaps a number to bear in mind is that about 80% of the water use of water use that actually kind of is no longer available after the use is agriculture across the country, and certainly in the western U.S. And so there's a lot of juggling that can be done before we start moving people around because of water.
So the answer is less agriculture, more meat production. Dr. Kansen, last comment, question? You get the final word now.
Kathy asked the question, but I'm curious, do you foresee any kind of population migration anytime soon based on the water energy situation?
Well, I'll mention that Reinert and I know about a study that was commissioned by the Department of Energy's, I guess it was the Sandia Lab. It was commissioned by Schwarzenegger to look at this problem of eco-migration, environmental refugees out of Southern California because of water and other disasters related to climate. And it was pretty dire. So there are agencies in the national and state government who are preparing for that possibility and looking at the projections. Where do we move people? How do we convince Oregon to accept refugees from California? Not a joke when you think about the border problem. You know, those people in Oregon, they got guns. I'm joking.
And I would just remark on kind of a global scale, I think that the primary way that the sort of dislocation you're talking about will come about, if it comes about, is what Mickey put his finger on, which is food insecurity. You know, it will be when the water systems, for instance, are an easy way to disrupt food systems. And it's as those go bad in various places around the world that we'll see the big dislocations.
Well, one of the big stories of 2010 that will be reported probably a year or two from now, the 10 million drought refugees who've moved out of Chinese drought zones, right, and what that has done to some of the cities surrounding the drought zone or in the drought zone. The expectation of rural dwellers is they're going to get more access to water in the cities, which has been one of the drivers for people moving into cities in China, and it's the largest mass migration in the history of the world, so it's going to be an interesting process to watch as Chinese build greenfield cities but also retrofit existing cities. All right, on that happy note, thank you all. We're going to migrate toward lunch. That's the other human migration that's taking place. And coffee outside. Thank you all for joining us this morning.